I want to show you one of the issues that you can run into when you're using dynamic memory. So I have a Generation 2, and it doesn't matter because the Gen 1 and Gen 2 are the same when it comes to dynamic memory. But a Gen 2 machine, and let's go in and look at those dynamic memory configuration settings again. And I want you to notice something. I have a startup RAM of 1024 megabytes and a minimum RAM of 512, which is working out on this virtual machine quite well. It's settled down to 512. Here's the issue that you can run into. The issue is that when you try to restart this VM, it doesn't have enough RAM, and it may actually fail or be really slow to restart because it doesn't have the startup RAM that it initially started with. Well, in Server 2012, this was fixed. So you don't actually have to worry about this in 2012. But in your older operating systems like 2008 R2, you still have to worry about this. Now, this is fixed with a thing known as smart paging. And what smart paging is since it's already enabled, but here's what it does. If needed, it creates a series of temporary files that act as memory. So it creates them on disk. Now, you know that disk is going to be a lot slower than if it was real memory. So this can be a performance degradation, but at least if you're restarting the VM, it'll restart. And so these temporary files get created on disk and are used as the memory needed to achieve its startup RAM amount. So in this case, it would be adding another 512 on disk so that it could get started. Now, once the machine is started, it will then remove those temporary files. Now, why do you need to know this? Well, the location of where those temporary files are located. If you take a look over at the settings for this VM underneath management, we have the smart paging file location. Now, because my VM is running, I can't make a change here, and it's kind of hard to read. So let me close out of this one and go to my Generation 1 VM where you can see it a little bit better. So I'm just going to go down to the smart paging file location. And here's what you want to do. Like we had said at the very beginning of this module, you want to locate your VMs on a separate storage device. So you don't want it on the same storage location as the operating system. In this case, it still is located on my operating system. So you want to make sure that this is in a different storage location. Now, by default, if you installed the role and put it on a separate storage location, then it will already have it. But keep it with the VM and make sure that it's separate so you can get at least the best performance out of this as you can. Now, this solves a lot of problems, although during a restart, you still may have some performance degradation. One of the things you also can do to avoid this is when you do configure dynamic memory, you might make that minimum amount the same as the startup RAM. Now, that would avoid the issue altogether, and we've done that in the past under older versions of Hyper-V. However, that doesn't necessarily optimize your memory the best either. So there's always going to be a little bit of give and take. Coming up next, you may have challenges monitoring the resources that your VMs are using. We want to give you an option to help you out with this. So we're going to do resource metering.